My family took my inheritance after Dad died, claiming I didn't deserve it, so I fought back legally and took triple what they stole from me. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and my dad was the one person I thought would always have my back. He wasn't just a father, he was the kind of man who showed love in quiet ways. Every Saturday morning, we'd grab coffee at that old diner downtown, just the two of us, and talk about everything from football to life goals. He worked long hours at the factory, sometimes 12, 14 hours a day, just to make sure we had what we needed, but he always carved out time for me. He had this way of making you feel like you mattered, even when the world outside was chaotic. We shared small routines that I now realize were the threads keeping me connected to him. Sunday mornings were for fishing trips down by Miller's Creek. Evenings meant him showing me how to fix the leaky faucet or balance the checkbook. He wanted me to understand responsibility, to be prepared. Sometimes I'd just sit in his study, listening to him talk about how he had built his savings over decades, how he hoped one day I'd have a piece of what he worked for. Those moments made me feel like I wasn't just living in the shadows of my older cousin or sibling. He saw me. He really saw me. Dad had always hinted in casual ways about leaving behind a home, some savings, maybe a share in the small family business he co-owned with his brother. I never thought much about the numbers. It wasn't greed. It was security, a promise that I'd be looked after if he wasn't around. And honestly, I trusted him completely. Our family dynamic was complicated. My cousin Ryan was the golden kid, the one who got praised, the one who seemed to float through life with everything falling into place. But my dad never compared me openly. He'd quietly reassure me that fairness wasn't always visible, but it existed. I went to bed most nights feeling secure, imagining a future where my father's hard work became my foundation. I had no reason to think that security could ever be threatened till everything changed in ways I couldn't have imagined. Dad passed away on a rainy Thursday. The world felt like it stopped for me. I still remember the cold metal of the hospital railing under my hands, the sterile smell of antiseptic, and the way my mom's quiet sobs echoed in the hall. I thought losing him would be the worst part, but I had no idea the storm that followed would come from the people I trusted most. The funeral was a blur. Cousins and relatives came in suits, offering hugs that felt stiff and rehearsed. Everyone spoke about how much they'd miss him, but their eyes carried something else: curiosity, calculation, the kind of look that makes you wonder what else they're thinking. Ryan, my cousin, smiled too broadly when he said, "He always admired your hard work, but you know, life isn't always equal." I laughed it off at first, trying to brush away the weird chill crawling down my spine. A few days later, we gathered at the lawyer's office. My heart sank the moment I saw the pile of paperwork. My mom, my cousin, even some distant uncles hovered too close, whispering about arrangements, about fair shares, about what I really needed. I tried to keep calm. "I thought Dad wanted this to be simple," I muttered, my voice barely steady. Ryan shrugged, pretending to be casual. "Things change, I guess." His words hit harder than I expected. At home, I kept replaying every memory fishing trips. Late night talks, him teaching me how to manage bills, his quiet pride in my small wins. Was it all going to be erased because of their greed? I felt a knot in my chest, a mix of disbelief and anger that I wasn't ready to face. And yet, mid the confusion, a tiny thread of hope stayed with me. Dad had always been careful, meticulous, protective. Surely he left something behind that would make this right. I went to bed that night, staring at the ceiling, heart racing, wondering just how far my own family could go and whether the person I trusted the most could really have my back. Even in death, the day of the family meeting arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a storm I couldn't control. The lawyer's office smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, but I barely noticed. My stomach churned as relatives filed in, whispering and glancing at me like I was some obstacle in their plans. I tried to remind myself this was about fairness, about honoring my dad. But from the moment the meeting began, it felt like I was already on the defense. The lawyer cleared his throat and started reading. My heart pounded, my hands sweaty as he outlined the assets: the house, the small business shares, the savings accounts. And then it happened, the first real punch to the gut. The majority of it had been legally redirected to Ryan and some cousins, with my share reduced to a fraction. "Your father knew you were stable?" Ryan said smugly, almost gleeful. "He wanted to make sure everything went to those who really needed it." I blinked, thinking I'd misheard. What are you talking about?" "I've worked my whole life, just like him." He never said. I choked on the words, my voice shaking. Mom avoided my gaze, fidgeting with her hands, whispering something about how life isn't always fair. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, each inhale sharp and painful. Everything Dad had built, everything I thought was mine, was slipping through my fingers. The anger rose fast, hot and raw, but so did disbelief. How could they do this? How could they justify taking what he promised me? I left the meeting in a daze, the rain outside soaking through my coat, as if the sky itself was mourning with me. Ryan smirked from the doorway, waving casually, like he hadn't just gutted me. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the fishing pictures on my wall, me and Dad, smiling in the sun, and realized this wasn't just about money anymore. It was betrayal. My own blood had turned against me, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't just sit back and watch them rewrite my father's legacy. But I had no idea how far I'd have to go to fight back. The days after the meeting were brutal. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every little thing reminded me of Dad. Driving past the house I thought would be mine felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I kept replaying Ryan's smug face, Mom's averted eyes. The way they justified taking what I'd earned in love and trust. It wasn't just money, it was my father's legacy. It's the life I thought he was leaving me. It was being stolen right in front of me. I tried talking to friends, but even their reassurances felt hollow. "Maybe it's not worth it," one said. "Family's complicated, but it was worth it." It had to be. I couldn't just let them erase everything my dad had worked for. I started digging through old files Dad had left me, bank statements, handwritten notes, small ledgers he kept tucked in drawers. Every piece of paper felt like a lifeline, a secret map he might have left to guide me. Meanwhile, the family seemed to enjoy flaunting their victory. Ryan posted pictures of himself at Dad's favorite restaurant, drinking wine and laughing with relatives, while I sat in my apartment staring at the ceiling. It wasn't just humiliation. It was rage wrapped in disbelief. One night Mom called, voice soft but heavy with guilt or maybe manipulation. "We're just trying to do what's best for everyone," she said. I wanted to scream. What about what Dad wanted? What about me? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just a financial fight. It was personal. They weren't just taking what belonged to me. They were rewriting my dad's story, erasing the part of him that believed in me. And somewhere deep down, I felt a spark ignite, tiny but stubborn. I wouldn't just sit back. I wouldn't let them win, but I had no idea just how messy and complicated this battle would become, more how far they'd go to stop me before I even had a chance to fight. I knew I couldn't go up against them blind. So I started gathering everything I could. Every receipt, every letter, every scrap of paper Dad had kept. It was painstaking. Sometimes I'd find nothing for hours, then suddenly a ledger or a note that made my heart leap. I remember one night, rain tapping against my window, holding a faded bank statement that didn't match what Ryan and Mom claimed. My hands shook not from cold, but from a mix of fear and adrenaline. I reached out to a lawyer Dad had trusted, a sharp woman named Claire, who listened to my story without interrupting. "They can't just rewrite a will like that," she said firmly. "If we dig, we'll find the truth. And if we do, they won't see it coming." Her confidence was infectious. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't powerless. At the same time, the family kept pressing. Every conversation with Mom or Ryan was laced with guilt-tripping and subtle threats. "You're making this so difficult," Mom said one evening, voice trembling. "We just want peace," Ryan smirked in the background. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Peace. This wasn't peace, it was theft, betrayal, humiliation. Late nights became a blur of scanning documents, cross-referencing transactions, and making timelines. Every discovery felt like uncovering a piece of Dad's hidden puzzle, a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I found inconsistencies in business accounts, signatures that didn't match, and small savings that had been quietly siphoned away. Each one was a small victory, but it also reminded me of how deep the deception ran. By the end of that week, I realized this wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about justice, about making sure my dad's life and intentions weren't erased. And in the back of my mind, I started thinking about the legal battle. Ahead, the confrontations and the long fight that would either break me or set me free. I wasn't expecting what I found next. Dad had a file tucked away in his old office, hidden behind some old photo albums, a folder marked simply, "For my son." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a codicil, handwritten, stating clearly that the bulk of the estate house, savings, and a portion of the business was meant for me. My heart raced. Dad had left me a safety net, something concrete to fight for. I reread it 3 times, tears blurring my vision. He had anticipated everything: the favoritism, the manipulations, the possibility of family turning against me. It was like he'd left a roadmap, knowing I'd have to navigate a storm to claim what was mine. Suddenly, the hopelessness of the last few weeks felt like it could shift. For the first time, I felt power. Not vengeance yet, but a way forward. I called Claire immediately. "I found something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Something that changes everything." She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Good, we'll use it. But be careful. Once they know you have this, they'll fight harder." And she was right. Within hours, the family began acting differently. Ryan started showing up at Dad's office talking about settlements and trying to convince me to drop the fight. Mom called constantly, alternating between pleading and passive-aggressive guilt trips. I felt their panic, their calculated moves, and part of me wanted to laugh at how quickly they realized the tables were turning. But even with the codicil, I knew this was just the beginning, the lawyer warned me. They won't give up easily. They'll dig for anything, twist anything, and try to make you doubt yourself. And I did doubt myself sometimes in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling,
wondering if the emotional and financial costs would be worth it.
Then I clenched my fists and remembered Dad's words. Do what's right, no matter who stands in your way. That was enough. I had the proof, I had the drive, and now I had the fire to fight. But I also realized something chilling. The war I was about to wage could destroy more than just inheritance. It could destroy my family entirely. The courtroom felt colder than any place I'd ever been. Sterile lights, polished wood, and the faint smell of old legal books was like stepping into a battlefield I couldn't escape from. I gripped the armrests of the chair, heart hammering as Claire laid out our case. Every document, every ledger, every note from Dad was ready. I felt a mix of adrenaline and dread. I knew what was coming. The family arrived like they owned the room, smiling for appearances, whispering and nudging each other. Ryan caught my eye and smirked, trying to appear confident, but there was tension there I hadn't noticed before. Mom sat quietly, hands folded, glancing at me once or twice, as if gauging my reaction. I could feel the weight of every accusation, every stare, every whispered doubt. Claire spoke first. "This codicil, handwritten by your father, clearly indicates the intended distribution of the estate," she said. She handed the document to the judge, who studied it carefully. Ryan's smug confidence faltered slightly, and I felt a rush of hope. But the battle wasn't over. Their lawyer rose, voice smooth and sharp, trying to twist everything into doubt. "The signature is unclear. The intentions are vague. Perhaps your client should consider negotiating." I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. Negotiating wasn't an option. Dad's wishes weren't up for debate. I could feel my pulse in my throat as Claire countered piece by piece, exposing inconsistencies in their claims, contradictions in accounts, and signs of manipulation. Each revelation tightened the knot in my chest and fueled the fire in my gut. Outside the courtroom, I could hear muffled whispers of panic from the family. They realized this wasn't a fight they could control anymore. Ryan glared at me once, a silent challenge, but I stared back, unflinching. I wasn't just fighting for inheritance, I was fighting for Dad's memory, for justice, and for the truth. And as the judge called for a recess, I walked out into the bright sunlight, rain from the past week still dripping from the trees. Realizing the hardest part wasn't proving the codicil, it was enduring the psychological warfare my own family was waging. The war was only beginning. I had no idea just how far they'd go to break me. After the first day in court, the family backlash hit me like a freight train. Ryan started showing up everywhere at the grocery store, outside my apartment, even calling under the guise of checking in. Every interaction was dripping with guilt-tripping and subtle threats. "You don't want to ruin this family, do you?" Mom said one evening, voice trembling but loaded with tension. My chest tightened, like the walls of my world were closing in. They weren't just trying to take the inheritance. They were trying to break me emotionally, to make me doubt myself, to make me bend. Friends tried to reassure me, but nothing could shake the weight of betrayal. I began questioning everything had. I misread Dad's wishes? Was I making a mistake by fighting so hard? Each sleepless night felt heavier than the last, with visions of Dad's office, his handwritten notes, and the family smirking at me replaying over and over. The smell of rain and wet leaves outside my window became almost comforting. It was the only constant in a world that seemed intent on destabilizing me. Ryan's manipulations weren't just emotional. Small legal moves, last-minute document filings, and whisper campaigns among relatives made me realize how calculated they were. Claire kept me grounded, telling me to focus, to prepare, to keep my head clear. But even her words couldn't erase the sinking feeling that this war was personal now. This wasn't just money. This was my father's legacy, his trust, and my own dignity. I started keeping a journal, detailing every interaction, every document, every lie they tried to spread. It became a lifeline, a place to vent, plan, and remind myself why I couldn't back down. I realized something vital. I might not just win the case by the law, but by endurance, by refusing to let their emotional games destroy me. That night, as I stared at Dad's fishing photos on the wall, rain tapping against the window pane, I made a silent promise. No matter how hard they pushed, how manipulative they got, I would see this through. But deep down, I knew the real battle, psychological, emotional, relentless, was just beginning. The setback hit me like a sledgehammer. I thought we had everything lined up, the codicil, the ledgers, Dad's notes, but during one hearing, their lawyer produced a document I hadn't seen before. It was a fabricated amendment that claimed Dad had changed his mind years ago. My stomach sank. The judge seemed unsure, and I felt the floor fall out beneath me. For the first time since Dad passed, I felt powerless. I left the courtroom in a daze. Rain dripping from my coat, slick sidewalks reflecting the city lights. I sat on a bench outside and stared at the ground, chest heavy, mind racing. Every memory of Dad, the laughter during our fishing trips, the way he'd ruffle my hair, his quiet pride felt tainted by the looming threat that his wishes might be overridden by lies. I couldn't breathe. The fight I thought I could win seemed like it was slipping away. Even friends' calls felt distant. Every attempt at reassurance bounced off me. "Maybe it's not worth it," one whispered. But I couldn't accept that. This wasn't just money. It was my father's trust, my own dignity. I went home and stared at his office, at the cluttered desk he used to sit at the notes I had meticulously cataloged. And for the first time, doubt crept in. Could I actually win this? Could I endure the emotional, financial, and mental toll of taking on my own family? Hours later, sleep came fitfully, filled with nightmares of the family laughing at my desperation, Dad's disappointed eyes, and the estate slipping through my fingers. I woke up feeling hollow, defeated, exhausted. Rock bottom wasn't a single moment. It was an overwhelming, creeping realization that the people who were supposed to protect you could be the ones trying to destroy you. But even in that hollow space, Claire had found a small, overlooked loophole, one tiny legal thread that could unravel the family's lies. My pulse quickened as I stared at her message. This could turn everything around. And in that instant, I realized that the fight wasn't over. It was just about to get real. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope over fire. Claire's discovery, the loophole she'd found buried in some obscure filing, was small, almost insignificant on paper, but it was enough to shake the foundation of their case. I remember holding the email in my hands at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, my heart racing. This was the break I'd been waiting for, the thread that could unravel all their lies. In court, the tension was suffocating. Ryan strutted in like he owned the place, Mom trailing behind, offering awkward smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Their lawyer tried to dismiss the loophole as irrelevant technicality, but Claire wasn't having it. She stood up, voice steady, and meticulously connected every dot: the codicil, the original ledgers, Dad's handwriting, the discrepancies in their amendment. The courtroom shifted. I could feel the momentum tipping in my favor. Ryan's smirk faltered when Claire held up one document that clearly invalidated their claims. Leaned back, muttering under his breath, but I caught at fear. Mom's hands twisted together, her voice trembling when she whispered something about just wanting peace. I realized the panic I'd been feeling for weeks was now mirrored in them. Outside, the air was crisp and smelled faintly of rain. I walked down the steps, sun breaking through clouds, and felt a rush of vindication. They'd underestimated me. They'd underestimated Dad's careful planning. And for the first time, I truly believed that justice wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Still, I knew the fight wasn't over. One misstep, one overlooked argument, one impulsive decision could tip the scales back in their favor. Every step forward was cautious, calculated. Every phone call, every document needed scrutiny. But standing there, letting the sunlight hit my face, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Oh, and I vowed to see this through. To make sure my father's legacy and my own would not be stolen by the people who were supposed to love me most. The day of the final ruling was surreal. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Every whisper, shuffle, and cough magnified in my ears. Ryan and Mom sat stiffly, eyes darting toward me whenever I moved, their smiles gone. Replaced by a mix of panic and disbelief. I felt a strange calm wash over me. Had done everything I could. Now it was out of my hands. The judge began to speak, voice steady, deliberate. After reviewing all submitted documents, the codicil is validated. The estate shall be distributed as intended by your father. My chest tightened, a mix of relief and disbelief. I glanced at Claire, who gave a small nod, eyes shining. Ryan's face went pale. Mom's hands fidgeted nervously in her lap. I could see the anger and humiliation etched into their expressions. They'd tried to rewrite my father's wishes, manipulate the process, and break me, and it had all crumbled. But the victory didn't stop there. The punitive damages, meant to compensate for the unlawful redirection of funds, were awarded to meet triple the portion they had stolen. My heart raced as I realized the full weight of it. This wasn't just reclaiming what was mine. It was justice, cold and undeniable. Ryan's smirk was gone, replaced by stunned silence. Mom whispered something I didn't catch, probably an excuse or a last-ditch guilt trip, but it didn't reach me. Walking out of the courtroom, sunlight hitting my face, the rain from earlier, washing the city's streets, I felt something I hadn't in weeks: pure empowerment. I wasn't just financially vindicated. I had reclaimed my father's legacy, my dignity, and my peace of mind. The family who had tried to destroy me had been exposed, and the truth had prevailed. For the first time in months, I could breathe without fear, without anger clawing at my chest every minute. I had fought the people who were supposed to love me most, and won. And even though some relationships were broken beyond repair, I felt free, finally, truly free. But as I held the final documents in my hands, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever make me doubt my worth again. The weeks after the court ruling were strange quiet, almost surreal. The weight I'd carried for months, the sleepless nights, the panic, the betrayal, all began to lift. I spent mornings walking through Dad's favorite park, the sun warm on my face, the air crisp and clean. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe without the constant tension of family manipulation pressing down on me. I kept the house exactly as Dad had left it. Little touches here and there to honor him: his fishing rod still in the corner, his favorite mug on the counter. Every time I passed a photograph of him smiling, I felt a surge of gratitude and a pang of loss. But there was also pride in standing up for myself, in refusing to be silenced or cheated, and in making sure my father's legacy was preserved. I reached out to a few distant relatives who had quietly supported me. And for the first time, family interactions weren't about fear or manipulation. Conversations were calm, sometimes even warm, though I knew some bridges were burned forever. Ryan had stopped calling, stopped messaging, his smug confidence replaced by a silence that was almost satisfying. Mom avoided confrontation. I realized I didn't need their approval or forgiveness to move forward. Financially, I was secure. The triple damages had changed my life. But more than that, the fight had given me something money could never buy: self-respect, resilience, and clarity. I began planning a future on my terms, taking risks Dad would have encouraged, exploring opportunities I had once hesitated to pursue. And in those quiet moments, I realized that the inheritance wasn't just about money. It was about justice, empowerment, and honoring someone who had believed in me when no one else did. I had reclaimed more than an estate. I had reclaimed my life. Looking out the window at the sunset, I whispered a silent promise to Dad. I won't just survive, I'll thrive. And I'll make you proud. The storm had passed, and for the first time, I felt the warmth of peace settle into my chest.